Dr. Kramer and I just want to say thanks to all of you for joining us today. We're really excited about this presentation, really excited to share some of this information with you. And thanks to GSLS for having us. It's a real pleasure for me to be with my good friend, Dr. Kramer. She's actually one of my inspirations for starting my specialty clinic. And it's always really fun to lecture together. My name is Dr. Stephanie Wu. I am with the Contact Lens Institute of Nevada in Las Vegas. My friend Dr. Kramer owns the Miami Contact Lens Institute and also Weston Contact Lens. So I'm just going to pass it off to Dr. Kramer to take it away.
Thank you, and it is an honor to be here. So thank you so much for having us to the GSLS. Dr. Wu, it's funny that you say that because I've always admired your work and I've always looked up to you and you've always inspired me. So it's funny that you say that, but I'm glad that we can learn from each other mutually and obviously share our knowledge and experience with all these attendees here with us today. So I'm going to start on a very serious note, actually. This was a photo that was taken by a good friend of mine when he went to the World Cup in Russia, I think last time it was. And basically what you see here are two vending machines with contact lenses. So it's pretty straightforward. You put in your prescription, you request, just like as if you were getting potato chips or a chocolate bar. And then you get your contact lenses, you just put in the money and you get it. And this is scary because, as you know, this is a medical device that should be fit and not just purchased like this. And I'm just worried about this being the future of contact lenses all around the world. And there's one thing that I think we all need to remember is that actually two things. So first, no two eyes are the same. So you can see all these corneal topographies here just showing differences in different types of eyes. You can even see two different eyes from the same patient just being completely different. So I think that's one really important thing. And another really important thing is that one size does not fit all. And so our job as contact lens specialists is to fit an eye and not just, dispense contact lenses. And that's what a vending machine does. It just dispenses. And so it's very important to specialize to keep this, this world of contact lenses alive so that we don't get replaced by vending machines. What do you think, Dr. Wu?
Yeah, so I think that's such a good point because as even in America has kind of changed, contact lenses have kind of become more of a commodity, it seems like, and where it didn't used to be that way 30 years ago. So times are really changing, and I think that not only from what we've learned from GSLS and a lot of the comments that have been made by Craig Norman and Pat Caroline and Jason Nichols, we're really what's really happened over this last years is a lot of doctors have realized that having some sort of specialty to stand out and to kind of differentiate themselves from other practices is becoming a really popular trend. And I think that what fits right in with that is specialty lenses. So basically, the type of contact lens practice that we're talking about is building a practice that's really focused on specialty lenses. A lot of doctors reach out to us because they want to know more about specialty lenses. And it could be as simple as, I have no idea what I'm doing and I don't know where to start. Where can I even learn how to get this information? And then on the other hand, we have doctors that attend some of the workshops that we do and read a lot of the lectures, and they do a lot of wet labs and things, but they don't know how to implement that into practice. And so that's just something that Dr. Kramer and I are really passionate about, is trying to help these doctors, including yourselves, make your contact lens practice a primary focus within your clinic. So in a specialty lens practice, one of the main differences is that contact lenses are the primary focus, not the optical, which in a traditional optometry clinic is the complete opposite. really you have to differentiate yourself by having a lot of different modalities. So you need to be able to have soft lenses, custom soft lenses. Um, Maybe you're doing myopia management. Maybe you're doing scleral lenses. Maybe you're fitting irregular corneas. So you have to have a lot of fitting sets to be able to kind of qualify yourself or kind of let people know that this is something that you're doing, as well as offer really innovative technology that maybe nobody else has. And Dr. Kramer, I know in your clinic, you have both optical and contact lenses. What are some of the things that you did to kind of shift that paradigm?
Well, I think I'm glad that you brought that up because I was going to bring that up. I know that in your practice there is no optical, and I think that is ideal for having a specialty contact lens practice. I do have an optical. It's really not the focus, but a lot of my patients are already referred by or have seen several other physicians. So kind of the last thing they want to do by the time they get to me is like go somewhere else for their glasses. So I would say that I have it for patient convenience, and it is convenient. However, if you really want to specialize in contact lenses, I think the way Dr. Wu does it is not having an optical is really the way to do it. And maybe you could elaborate a little bit on how you came up with that when you set up your practice.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and a lot of practices don't have the luxury to be able to do that because, as we know, as eye doctors, opticals really are bread and butter. But the way that mine came about was I had done private practice for almost 10 years, where I managed basically 3 locations, lots of different diseases, and then just regular eye care, regular glasses, and then and specialty contacts. And as I grew my patient base, I really started to realize that my true passion within optometry was specialty lenses. So I kind of just sat down and I thought about it, and I did a lot of research. I took a lot of time to reach out to other doctors that had a specialty lens focus. And everybody has their own opinions, and different things work for different practitioners. But for me in particular, I said, if I could have the best practice, the most perfect practice, money aside, if that didn't matter, what would I enjoy doing on a day-to-day basis? And so after I kind of thought about it a lot, got a lot of different opinions from some of the experts in the industry, from all over the world, I said to myself, if I can just do specialty contact lenses, that would be my ideal clinic. So once I had that as a goal, then I started thinking about ways I could make that happen. And it's actually been a really good thing for me because, as you mentioned, Dr. Kramer, when you have other doctors in the area that have an optical, then they're more likely to refer patients to you because they know that you're not going to steal their patient for glasses because you don't even have an optical. So I think that's
Yeah.
something that's become really important in my local community in Las Vegas, is that I don't have any glasses and I'm not practicing primary care. So that all of my patients have to go somewhere else for all of that.
Yeah, and I was actually gonna say that, like, you probably get more referrals from ODs, and you touched on the topic of how regular ODs who don't specialize in contact lenses do the opposite. They focus more on the optical than contact lenses, so they may not be as interested in referring a patient to you. And we'll get to referrals a little bit later in this presentation, but they might not be as open to refer patients to you if they know you have an optical, just because they might be afraid of losing that revenue later on.
So another thing that's really important about having some sort of a specialty within your practice, if you are going to focus on specialty contacts, is you have to remember that if you are going to be taking this on, you are going to have a major emphasis on anterior segment disease. So it's not just your regular patients that you're seeing that just need traditional glasses and contacts. If this is something you really want to pursue, you have to go into it understanding that a lot of these diseases you're going to need to manage. You're going to have great mentors, great resources, because there's going to be a lot of things that can pop up that you might need help with. And Dr. Kramer, is that something that you found as you started implementing specialty lenses in more and more? Did you see that you were having to manage some of these diseases that you maybe didn't expect?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that I when I was studying for boards, let's say, I was like, oh, I'm never gonna see this, like graft versus host disease, like, you know what I mean? Which is relatively rare, but in a contact lens practice, it's super common. You know what I mean? Or like keratoconus, I mean, we probably see that 3 to 5 times a day, whereas a regular, primary care optometrist might see that 3 to 5 times a year. So absolutely, 100% agree. So if you, it's interesting when you look on Google at how much people are looking up these different conditions. You can see obviously the amount of space it takes up is the most looked up topic. So you can see here, I was talking about graft versus host disease. Like, look how small that is compared to like Steven Johnson's or keratoconus, which are a lot more common. And then if we look here, let me just move this. So if we look here, obviously diabetes is a lot more common than any of that. Glaucoma, these are things that we don't really deal with as like a focus in a contact lens practice. And all those other conditions that were previously a lot more common in the previous slide become a lot smaller. And then if you compare all this to Kim Kardashian, then you can see how much more that is looked up than or researched online than any of the things that we deal with on a daily basis. So this is just showing you how niche this practice is. I mean, you are dealing with a small fraction of the population. Now, did that scare you, Dr. Wu, like starting from scratch, knowing that this is a niche and that you're not going to be catering to, the vast majority of people walking around in Las Vegas?
Yeah, it was very scary. It still is because, I've been open for 1 year now, and it's a very niche type of practice. And I knew that there were going to be some days that the phone's not going to ring at all. There might be weeks that go by where I don't have a new patient because this is such a very, very select, very, very special type of clinic. And so, yes, it was something I was really scared about. But this last year was amazing, even with opening up a new clinic in the midst of a pandemic. So that gives me major hope that it can really only go up from here because it was such a weird year for everybody last year. And that was something scary. But I think that when you're really passionate about something, it becomes not about the money anymore. And that's like secondary. It's like, I know, and I have such a vision for this clinic. I think that eventually people will come here from all over the world to get fit with specialty lenses. So just keeping that kind of end goal in mind, I think really helps me kind of power through. So when there's difficult times, I just always try to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
And that's great. Just having that passion and drive. I think that's what you need. I think that's what these patients are looking for when they come to us. And again, don't be afraid just because it's a small niche. These people need our help. And if you really don't do this frequently, then you're not really considered a specialist. So I think that dedicating your time to this and actually doing it is worth it, even though you're not getting volume. It's more about quality in these cases. So if we talk about where these contact lens specialists are located, you can see that most of them are in private practice. According to this graph here on the right, you could see 52% private. There's some that work with MDs. That's a great way to see a lot of pathology for sure. And then a lot of them work in universities also. So these are the three main places that you would find a contact lens specialist. And the thing is with a specialty in optometry is that it's not really recognized like it is, for example, in ophthalmology, where you do a fellowship and you become a cornea specialist or a glaucoma specialist or retina specialist. It's kind of, yes, there are residency programs. Those are not mandatory for becoming a specialist. You can do it kind of on your own. So there's a lot of different ways to get there. And the thing is, it's not really recognized like officially. But I think now it's a lot more, I guess, established than it once was before. Um, and maybe you can comment on that also, Dr. Wu.
Yeah, so I think this is a really cool slide just kind of showing where the specialists are, because I think a lot of people get maybe discouraged or they think that they can't do it within private practice. But look at this slide. This is showing us that so many people that practice these types of specialty lenses are in private practice. So don't be intimidated if that's something that you are doing, or you are obligating, that you're kind of figuring out if you are going to do that or not. So I think that it's just important to realize that there's so many different places that you can implement this. So you could be at an institution, you can be at your own practice, you can be in a group setting. And if this is something that you really want to do, you can find a way to do this in whatever setting you are in. So as long as whoever your employer is or whatever setting you're in, if they're okay with it, and you kind of develop a game plan, really anybody can implement this into their practice.
Absolutely. And we talked about referrals a little bit previously when we talked about optical, and self-referrals are common. So these are patients who maybe find about you online. A lot of these patients are desperate. They've gone to a lot of different specialists and they're still having problems. So a lot of them will take the time to look up online. We'll talk about online visibility a little bit later, but MDs are a great source of referrals, group referrals as well. And as we talked about, OD referrals are big as well, especially if you don't have an optical, and because you will not be in direct competition with these ODs.
So, a lot of questions that come up from other doctors to Dr. Kramer and I is, all right, I want to do this. Where can I get referrals? So there's a lot of different ways that we can generate referrals. The biggest one for me in the beginning was self refer, like Dr. Kramer just pointed out. I had to just kind of take it upon myself to look at the patients within my own clinic that I was seeing for regular eye exams and start mentioning specialty lenses as an option. That was my biggest source of referrals for the first probably like 3 years. After that, once word got out from either a patient telling another patient that had a similar condition, or some of the other doctors in the area could see my quality of work, then it became more about other doctors referring to me. But in the beginning, you can't just expect to get referrals right off the bat. That's sometimes not going to happen, and you have to kind of take it upon yourself to get these referrals. This slide I think is wonderful because Dr. Kramer is kind of the one. When I first started this practice, she gave me a lot of ideas of who to reach out to. Number one, for sure, hands down, are corneal specialists. So the doctors that are doing transplants, LASIK, refractive surgery, any sort of keratoconus, maybe cross-linking or intacts. Those doctors see strange corneas or weird corneas on a daily basis as well. And so those doctors are very likely to refer to you, especially if they don't have another referral source currently. Doesn't mean that you can't be another option, of course, but if a lot of doctors, especially in these rural areas, there's no optometrists that even want to fit these lenses. And Dr. Kramer, I wanted to ask you, with your experience being in Miami and a bigger city where there are lots of corneal specialists, how were you able to meet with corneal specialists and kind of let them know that this is what you were going to be doing? How did you establish that relationship when you first opened?
When I first started, I literally took a fitting set with me and I walked into like every single cornea specialist. I did my residency here, so I knew a lot and I knew of a lot of cornea specialists and ophthalmologists in general. But I made it a point to just, knock on doors. And actually, Hal Alstrom just asked in the Q&A, if you recommend to go to other eye care practitioners, do you recommend to go in person or just send an email? I mean, how many times do you get letters from like a new doctor or this and that? I think it's so much more effective to go in person. Obviously, this is pre-pandemic. Some people may not feel comfortable right now. So I'm talking about, regular times, just going in person, shaking hands, giving your business card, showing them what you do, showing them how passionate you are. There's nothing that can replace something like that. That's priceless. And then on this list also, you have oncologists. We talked about graft versus host disease, rheumatologists. We know that the TFOS dues talked about scleral lenses being a good treatment for dry eye. A lot of patients with rheumatoid issues will have severe dry eyes. So these are people that you can definitely reach out to.
So one of the other important things is trying to figure out how can you become an expert or somebody that's really, really proficient in specialty lenses. And there are a lot of different things that you can do. So number one, when you're in optometry school, make sure that if you are going on rotations, maybe pick a site that does specialty contact lenses. Maybe if you are interested in doing a residency or some sort of fellowship, getting in contact with some of the contact lens faculty at your school and saying, hey, this is something I'd really like to do. Can you recommend some programs to me? That's what I did in school. I had a major interest in specialty lenses during my 4th year. And then my contact lens faculty kind of recommended some programs, and that's kind of how I narrowed down my search for a residency. Apprenticeship and work experience, it's so important to have a good mentor or mentors. That is something that has really catapulted both Dr. Kramer and myself into the positions we're in now, is by developing really good relationships with people that are experts within the field. And something that you'll find out is, and Dr. Kramer, you can talk to this as well, but specialty lens experts, or the people that are like the best in the industry, are all incredibly gracious, nice, humble people that are wanting you to know this information. And I can't speak to how it is with other specialties, vision therapy and low vision, things like that. But I can tell you that within specialty lenses comes some of the kindest and most knowledgeable people, and they want to help you.
Absolutely. And more importantly, they want to help patients, and there's not enough of us out there. And that's why we're here in this webinar, sharing all our deepest and darkest secrets with you guys, because we want you to do this. We want you to be successful. We want you to help patients. And it's really, what we want you to understand is it's really not that hard, and it's so doable.
Yeah, and this is something else that you may want to consider, is not only kind of establishing yourself as a specialty lens expert, but also becoming a leader within your community. It could be local. It could be maybe within your optometric association. Maybe you take on some sort of position there. Maybe you get involved with some of the state associations, maybe some of the national and international. And this doesn't even have to be with optometry or eye things in general. A lot of times, even in your own community, in your own church associations, or maybe there's the Lions Club, Rotary. I mean, these are all like major things that are really in most every city. And even in those roles, you start to kind of differentiate yourself compared to some of the other people in your city, and you might gain referrals that way, which seems strange, but I've gotten lots of referrals from other people that aren't even eye doctors. They have a friend that they know had a corneal transplant from years back because they were in a trauma, and so they send them my way. So these referrals can sometimes come from the oddest places. Something else, a lot of people will ask us, how do we become involved in, lecturing for a major organization? So right now, the Academy of Optometry, the submission window is open and anybody can apply. Really, you can log on to the the AA Opt website, and you can submit a lecture or course or anything like that. If that's something you really want to do, then it's something that you can always apply for. Same thing with publishing. If sometimes people are like, you know what, I don't like speaking, I'm not comfortable with that, I don't want to do any presentations, but I really enjoy writing. I like kind of being behind the scenes, and even those types of things you can kind of do. And all you have to do is ask. If you asked a lot of different people that contribute to, let's say, contact lens spectrum, just asking them to be more involved, they can guide you in the right direction. And Dr. Kramer, I'm so interested in finding out what was your path like into some of these leadership roles. How did you get involved with the Scleral Lens Society? How did you get involved in writing for publications like Contact Lens Spectrum? How did you get involved in lecturing for some of these major meetings?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think when I became a member of the Scleral Education Society, you were the president, so you were my idol, Stephanie. But you can see my certificate of fellowship up there. And becoming a member is free, and you get all these resources. And then once you start, familiarizing yourself with scleral lenses, you can send them a couple case reports, get some points together, and then become a fellow. And becoming a fellow really puts you on the map. It gets you known amongst patients, amongst other scleral lens practitioners around the country, around the world. So I think that's such a big deal. Authoring, if you have an interesting case that you want to share, I mean, put it out there, just put yourself out there, and then your name will pop up, people will recognize it, and they might even send you patients, from other states, from other countries. So yeah. And there's a lot of, we talked about the Scleral Lens Education Society, but there's a lot of different organizations out there that we can be a part of. And it's getting involved in these that are really, really important. Like you guys are all here at the GSLS, so that's great. And obviously being involved with the GSLS is a great opportunity to help you specialize in contact lenses. There's a National Keratoconus Foundation, the ICSC, which is a meeting just about scleral lenses. We have the GPLI, the CLM, Contact Lens Society, IKA. We talked about the scleral lens education. We even have a forum for scleral lens research. So, I mean, you must have a lot of experience, Dr. Wu, going to these different conferences. And what is your take on the importance of going to these and your participation?
Definitely. So you made such a good point that there's a lot of things available. So it's not like, well, shoot, I missed the one and only event of the year. If there's some event that you can't make it to, that's not the case. There are so many events where you can learn about specialty lenses, find out more, connect with the right people. And I'm sure you'll agree with me, Dr. Kramer, that networking is probably one of the most important things that you can do at these meetings to try to get your career to the next level or get involved with some of these things that you would have no idea how to get involved with. I think it's so important to be able to write them, to meet the right people, and they can kind of help foster some of those relationships and connect you to the people that might help you.
Oh my God, I've learned so much just from networking. Like you said, people are so willing when they're passionate about it to share their knowledge and experience with you just in the middle of a hallway or over a glass of wine at these events. And that is priceless. I've learned just as much, if not more, from networking at these events than actually some of the courses. So it's really, really interesting and important.
So this is a topic it's also really important to us is basically finding a good location. So if you are wanting to implement specialty lenses within your own clinic, that will be kind of one thing. If you're already established, you've got a family set up and you're not planning on moving where you are at. But if you are wanting to figure out something for yourself and you're not committed to wherever you're at, making sure that you are in the right place really at the right time. And I can definitely speak to this with my full heart, because that was something important to me when I was looking for a practice location. Ideally, you don't want anybody that's fitting specialty lenses to an extent, maybe like right down the street. So like for me, moving to Miami would not be an option. You know, I've got Dr. Kramer right down the street. She's a great friend of mine, so I wouldn't even want to compete with her. So, you know, it's just, you got to look at some of these things. And, you know, I have the luxury of kind of going wherever I needed to go. You know, I'm not, I don't have, I have kids, you know, recently married. So yeah, I could really go wherever to kind of set up shop. And that's where I did the research in Nevada, trying to see how many doctors are practicing specialty lenses at a really high level. I went onto the Scleral Lens Society website to find a practitioner, just so I can see what states have the least amount of doctors, because those will essentially be states where maybe you don't have as much competition. And when you look at some of these other laboratories, a lot of the labs will have, you know, find an expert in their materials. So I did a lot of research. I found that in Nevada, there wasn't a ton of eye doctors that were practicing these types of lenses to a super high extent for the most part. And so I thought that it would be a really good place to try and open up and gain some referrals. And it's been a really great move for me. The doctors here have been amazing. Both northern and southern Nevada doctors have been supportive. Throughout my time here, I've discovered there actually are a lot more doctors here that practice specialty lenses, and I like to use them as a resource. I saw that Dr. Bolenbaker was on the line, and I've used him because we sometimes have to share patients, you know, when if they need to travel or they can't travel, especially with COVID right now being such a strange place. But Elise, you have such a different perspective than me, where I kind of showed up to a place where there really wasn't that much going on, but you have such a different perspective because you were in the city that you wanted to be, and you said, no, I'm going to develop a specialty lens clinic here in Miami. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and you know, there is a lot of competition here. There are a lot of people who dabble with specialty lenses. There's a lot of people who do it on a regular basis, and certainly when I came in, there were a lot of specialists doing it, and it could be intimidating for sure. I definitely didn't choose Miami. I didn't, like you, I didn't say, oh, this is a place where there's very little competition, that is a desirable place to live. I kind of lived here, as you mentioned, and I was like, okay, I want to specialize in contact lenses. Let me start. So it is a different way of starting up, but I think that regardless of the amount of competition around, if you're good and you're passionate, there is always a way to succeed, and there is enough condition. There's enough keratoconus going around. Are enough medical conditions going around for all of us to help out. So um, I think we can take some questions here. I know there's one here. Is there a straightforward way to offer your practice as a possible research site without being the main researcher? So do you have any experience doing research in specialty lenses?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I've been a site beta testing a lot of the different scleral lenses that have come to market. And so that usually comes to be where the laboratory will reach out to me and usually say, hey, we're beta testing this design. Would you like to try it on some patients and provide us some feedback so we can improve the design before we officially launch it? Some of the other research projects I've been in, I was part of the FDA study for neutrophil, which is one of the filling solutions that's approved for scleral lenses. So that is something that I was involved in. Again, the company reached out to me to see if I had any interest in being a site testing that solution. So I would say that, and I've actually tried to become a test site. Well, this was in my other practice where I was seeing lots and lots of patients, 40 patients a day. I wanted to try to get involved in some of the industry, some of the big four contact lens companies and either experimenting with the new lens designs or new contact lens solutions. But I think those are a little bit more difficult to get your foot in the door. But it's certainly not impossible. If research is something that you want to do in your clinic, I would say reaching out to your reps would be the first step that I would do. I would ask the reps and say, hey, is there anything, this is something I'm interested in. Do you have any connections that you can connect me to? But Dr. Kramer, have you been involved in any research?
Yeah, I just did, I did both a prospective study and a retrospective study with Dr. Vincent from Queensland University of Technology in Brisbane, Australia. So again, networking. Steve is a really good friend of mine, and we met actually at the ICSE, and we had similar interests in IOP and scleral lenses, and also in clearance after time. And so we wanted to investigate these things, and I thought, I have a lot of specialty patients. This is a good way to test it, and there's never too much evidence for something. So I think it was really a privilege and an honor for me to be able to contribute to scientific evidence. We have some more questions coming in. Let me see what time it is. All right, we can take a couple. By the way, one of the attendees says that you have more search results than Kim Kardashian, Stephanie Wu. So
Yeah, right.
um okay, so I'll answer this one, and maybe you can let us know also what you think, Dr. Wu. What other specialty lenses do you fit? Obviously we mentioned scleral lenses a lot, but myopia management, ortho K. Ortho K is part of myopia management. And I definitely do that both for adults and children. Obviously no myopia management in adults, but I also fit hybrid lenses, specialty soft lenses. Dr. Wu, you showed us yesterday in the webinar some specialty soft cases that were really interesting. RGPs. What about you, Dr. Wu? Is that pretty much?
Yeah, I think that, making a specialty lens practice within your practice your own is probably the best advice I can give. Some doctors, they really have a passion for irregular corneas and they don't want to even go down the myopia management path. And that's okay. If you're not passionate about it, forget it. Focus on something that you actually really like doing. And on the opposite side, some doctors, they really want to focus on myopia management and they don't really have a lot of interest in fitting some of these irregular corneas and having to manage some of these diseases and some of these other comorbidities long term. And that's okay. So I think within your clinic, whatever you want to do is what you should do. You shouldn't do anything that you're not comfortable with, because there's many doctors out there that have very successful practices with either myopia management plus private practice, or irregular corneas, diseased eyes, and other things. And then, like Dr. Kramer and myself, and a lot of other doctors out there, we kind of do it all because it's something that we're interested in. But if I had no interest in a certain thing, so like for me, dry eye is not something I particularly love and I'm passionate about. I will manage them with scleral lenses if it gets to that point, but some of the traditional dry eye treatments on the market, some of the machines that I know Dr. Kramer has, that's not passionate to me. I'm not interested in that. So I'm happy to give that to another doctor that is passionate about it. So I think the take home is whatever you want to do and however you want to make this as far as your specialty clinic, you can certainly do that.
Yeah, and there's another really interesting question. There's a lot of different questions, but in the interest of time, I'll talk about this one. One of the attendees asked, "What if there's someone else in your area that is offering the services at a much lower price? Then what do you do?" And yes, that is definitely, that's competitive for sure. I'll give you my input, and then I would love to hear what you think, Dr. Wu. But basically, I think that it's a whole experience that you are selling, not just a product, right? You're not just dispensing a lens, right? You are giving the patient an entire experience. And I think that we can both say that the experience that a patient has at our offices is in a way that we are confident that they wouldn't have a similar experience outside, even at a lower price. So they can go there, but I don't think that the experience would be the same. And that's maybe what can justify you increasing your prices. What do you think, Dr. Wu?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And this question actually comes up a lot on the Business of Scleral Lens Facebook group all the time. This is an exact question that people are always like, what do I do? Or what happens if this happens? And this happens to me because I think I probably am the highest price person in my area. But it's my job and my staff's job to relay the value of what we are doing and why that price is justified. So for me, I make sure that all the patients are aware that they are the only patient in the practice the entire time. The doctor is with you the entire time for 2 hours, face to face with doctor time. That's something that you will not experience at most other eye doctor clinics or even regular doctor clinics. I'm residency trained. I'm a fellow of the Scleral Lens Society. I have over 1,000, and to date it's over 2,000 specialty lens fits. So some of these things that kind of make you stand out, I think is so important. I'm not trying to be the cheapest one in my area. That is not my goal. So I have no problem explaining to other patients why we are different. What is that money going toward? Because it would be terrible if you answer the phone and then you just say this is a price and hang up. No, you have to train your staff to explain how your practice is different. Dr. Kramer speaks 6 languages. Hello, that's a talent that how many people have. I don't even know one other person in my life that can speak that many languages. And that is really important for the doctor to be able to speak Spanish to you, or the doctor to be able to speak Italian to you, and it's not some translator. I think there's a value to that. So there's some of these things that you have innately, or the skills that you've developed. And I think it's totally fine to let the patient know that these are some of the things that make you different.
Yeah, and if you think it's worth it, then don't drop your prices just because someone else is doing that. That lowers the value, the image of the experience that you're giving. So I'm going to go on to talk about what equipment and supplies do you need in a specialty contact lens clinic, and the answer is everything. No, I'm joking. But I wish, but what do you really need? What do you really need? You need a fitting set for sure, a slit lamp, and fluorescein. That's really the basic. Everything else to me is a bonus. You obviously need a way to measure keratometry readings. I think that's essential. And the best way to do that is with topography. So I would say that is maybe not 100% essential, but definitely probably the next item on the list that I think is the most important. But everything else is really a bonus. And the more technology you have, I think the more you can customize your lenses, the more possibilities you can offer your patients, the more patients are impressed not only with the technology, but also the result. I think that you can significantly lower your chair time with a lot of these. For example, a scleral profiler or anterior segment OCT. What do you think, Dr. Wu? What for you is absolutely essential?
Yeah, so I think that you made such a good point that you don't have to have all of this fancy equipment, super expensive equipment to get started with specialty lens fitting, which is what a lot of doctors get nervous about, that now they want to do this, but they don't have the financial means to be spending a lot of money on some of this equipment that we mentioned. So I definitely think that having a fitting set is essential, and having some sort of way to measure K values. Even if you had one of the old school manual keratometers and you're like, I can't afford anything else at this time, no problem. You can always upgrade as you go along. And even with the topographer, You can find used topographers, refurbished topographers, much less than getting new topographers by asking your equipment rep. So for me, that was super important, that I needed something that was affordable and that I knew that I could always upgrade to something later. But you do have to have a fitting set. You've got to have a slit lamp. I mean, obviously there's really no way around having that, having fluorescein. But for the first few years of my practice, I did not have an OCT in two of my satellite locations. So I was doing all of my specialty fits without an OCT and having to kind of use fluorescein on top of the lens to try to see where it was leaking in, taking pictures, taking videos with my phone, and then having the laboratory help me adjust the edges of the lens because I didn't exactly know how much it was compressing or lifting off. And so it's totally doable. It may take you a little bit longer to get to the end result. But again, if this is something that you really want to do and you explain that to the patient, this is how long it's going to take for the process to be from beginning to end, they understand. And a lot of these patients are just really grateful that you're able to help them see better. And so I think that the most important thing to realize is that you don't need a ton of equipment to get started in specialty lens fitting. You could probably just use what you have now and then just purchase things as you go. And another tip that I have is, if there's something that you just can't afford, but you're like, I really need this information, outsource it to someone else. For me, I don't have the means to have an A scan for axial length, but it's really important for myopia management. So what I do is I refer them to the doctor next door. They get an A scan and then they send me the information. So that prevents me from having to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on a piece of equipment that I wouldn't be using that much at this stage in my clinic. Maybe in the future, I will need one and it's just going to be more convenient. But for right now, if you're like, I don't have a topographer, I have no clue, send them down the street to another doctor. Set up some sort of referral program where you can send them to them, and either you pay them or the patient uses their insurance to get a topography, and then that doctor sends the image back to you. That's absolutely what I would do if I was totally broke and I absolutely could not afford any equipment, but this is something I still wanted to do. I would get creative and try to find like other doctors in the area that I could kind of partner with that would help me kind of with these specialty lens fits.
Yeah, and I do the same with specular microscopy. I don't have a specular microscope in the office, but I fit a lot of patients with corneal transplant. So I need that information, or I want that information to avoid inducing, corneal edema in some of these patients. And so I definitely collaborate, or co-manage is what I like to call it, with outside providers, just to get, all the information that I need. So corneal topography is really important, because I mean, like, as Dr. Wu and I stated, it's not absolutely necessary, but it's really helpful. It's helpful in determining the type of cornea that you have. Is it prolate? Is it oblate? How steep is it in the center? And it also helps, of course, with orthokeratology to monitor the progression of your treatment, and many other types of specialty lens fitting. So it helps you manage the disease. Obviously, if you're following patients with keratoconus, you can monitor progression. That is a progressive condition. Same thing with ectasia. And it can give you a lot of information. Some of them can help you diagnose conditions. Let's say you have a patient, you think they may have keratoconus, but you're not sure. If you have the pentacam, this gives you posterior corneal thickness. So really, really important information. Profilometry, going beyond the limbus. I know Dr. Wu and I were both extremely passionate about this technology, just giving us information about, beyond the limbus topography and elevation. And this is so, so useful and important for designing scleral lenses, especially. This is the only device that will give you information about the sagittal height of the surface that you're fitting. So very useful, and just significantly reduces the chair time of patients. A lot of the time you can get a good fitting lens with stability and really good vision on the first dispense. What has been your experience with profilometry? Dr. Wu?
Yeah, and you know what? It's you were the one that actually kind of talked me into getting a profilometer because I didn't know if it was worth it to spend the money because I felt like I was doing pretty good with just my standard fitting sets and
You
um,
probably were. You probably were doing pretty good. It's just that, it's always better. There's always room for improvement, I think, and it's
and you
yeah.
see these weird topographies and which you would not have seen with the naked eye, and you can kind of get a visual for it if you know, if you put like a standard scleral lens on that has like no peripheral curves at all, you can see kind of what's going on with the elevation and kind of what the overall shape is. But I think of profilometry like if you looked at someone's cornea with the slit lamp and you didn't have a topographer, you would really have no idea what that person's shape is of their cornea without doing a topography. And now the more and more I do of mapping the scleral shape, the more I realize, oh my gosh, like I don't even know how I did this beforehand. Not that I couldn't do it, but now that we have this tool to map the sclera, it has drastically reduced my chair time. The fits get from beginning to end a lot faster, so the patients are a lot happier. And I'm seeing things on the scleral topography that there's no way I would have seen any other way. Even putting on a scleral lens and just trying to figure out where is it lifting off? Do they have an irregular sclera shape? I don't know. And I think something that I think Dr. Christine Sint said in a lecture a long time ago is scleral lenses, you're fitting the sclera. And that was so mind-blowing to me that, you know what, we're not even fitting the cornea with scleral lenses. Who cares what the corneal shape is? It's really the scleral shape that we are actually fitting, because that's where the entire lens is bearing, is on the white part of the eye.
That's where all the weight of the lens is going to be.
Yeah,
And
isn't that like mind-blowing that like how did I not think of that before? And now it's like, yeah, it's so important to know what the shape is of the place that we're actually fitting.
they've learned so much from this. We've learned that the surface of the eye is actually a paraboloid, hyperbolic paraboloid shape, and we've learned just so much from this information. And it's
And
just
Dr.
always,
Krieger,
yeah.
there's a question from Hal, which is perfect for this exact topic. But could you discuss your perspective on standard sclerals versus custom like sclerals, from this iPrint, ScanFit, profilometry based? Has getting certified in these designs brought patients into your practices?
Yep, it has. People look for solutions online when they have tried other things and they've been unsuccessful. I had a patient this week who drove 2 hours just because I'm iPrint certified. And so yes, it makes you stand out from your competitors. It's worth it to do these things if you're passionate about and you want to specialize in scleral lenses or in specialty contact lenses. I don't know many people here who have profilometry in their offices. A lot of patients who come in, it's like the first time they've ever had, profilometry done. And they're very impressed by the technology, but it's not just for that. It's also to provide these patients with a solution that actually works when other things have failed in the past. So a lens that actually fits, that's actually comfortable, that they can wear all day. You can design these with software and with impression-based lenses. Sometimes you can't with a basic scleral lens. Actually, the scleral shape study group showed us that only 6% of people have just a regular symmetric scleral shape. And so that's like over 90% of people, we're going to need to modify the peripheral curves. And so you need to know how to do this when you're fitting scleral lenses. What do you think, Dr. Wu?
Yeah, so I love the comment that you made that somebody had come to you all the way, from a 2-hour drive just because you were iPrint certified. And I think that it does help you stand out from other practices if that's something you're trying to, differentiate yourself from the doctor down the street. And getting more and more certified in different things can really help build your name, build your brand, provide some of the backlinks from some of the different companies to your website. And then one of the other questions that kind of relates to this is, What percentage of your specialty fits are run through insurance versus cash pay? And what challenges have you faced when it comes to payment? For me, in my new clinic in Las Vegas, I don't take any insurance. So my clinic, I am 100% cash. So that's also a challenge, of course, when it comes to patients not want, me not taking their insurance. But I would say the biggest challenge is a lot of patients want to know why I don't take insurance. And it's really simple for me now. I just tell them, I don't want insurance dictating your care. I want to take care of you in the best possible way. If I took insurance, you would not be the only patient in this practice right now. I'd have other patients here. You would not be face to face with me for 2 hours. You'd be with technicians and staff like at my other clinic. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but this is just the type of care that I want to provide. And Dr. Kramer, I'd be so interested in knowing, how does your practice fare when it comes to cash patients versus insurance?
Yeah, and I think that that means a lot coming from you, Dr. Wu, because you've given a number of webinars on billing and coding, so you know all about it. You've done this for years, and so I think if you know you've tried it and it's not something that you want to mess with, then don't do it. And I think that there are two ways to set up a specialty lens clinic. One is through insurance and out of pocket, and one is out of pocket only. I don't think there's a right answer. I think you'll have more quantity, but again, quality over quantity in these clinics. I do take insurance. I'm glad I do for now. We'll see what happens. But yes, a lot of patients, some insurance companies don't pay, some people don't have coverage. That's frustrating. I come from Canada where everyone is covered. So that's a frustrating thing to deal with for me and for the patients, but we try our best. Patients are paying for insurance. We obviously want the insurances to pay. If they don't, a lot of patients are still willing to pay out of pocket because they need the vision, they need this type of lens for whatever reason. So we try it's case by case, you know what I mean? It's case by case, and we try our best to get everyone the lens. That's the ultimate result, and not think so much about the money and the insurance. And but we do try our best to get insurance to pay.
OCT is really important to have as a piece of equipment if you are going to start fitting specialty lenses like sclerals on a routine basis. This is something that we both have. You don't absolutely have to have it, especially if you're just starting with it. But as you fit more scleral lenses, you will want to invest in this technology.
Absolutely.
Photography is also great. There was a question on any cheap options for taking anterior segment photos and videos. I have an actual system. In my practice, it's quite expensive, so I don't think that'd be good for like a beginner. But there's tons of things online that you can just kind of Google slit lamp camera adapter, and there's a lot of different things that can come up. You can get a lot of things less than $100. In my other practices, I didn't have an adapter. I basically took the camera from my phone and like centered it in one of the oculars and like snapped a picture. It's absolutely not the best photo, but at least it gave me something that I could send to the lab consultants if I needed help fitting the lens.
Yeah, and then I talked about specular microscopy. I do not have this in my office, unfortunately, but so useful for giving you information about if you're fitting patients with corneal transplants, which if you specialize in contact lenses, you will for sure. Gives you information not only about the count of cells, but also the quality, which is extremely important for preventing complications. I would say, especially when using scleral lenses. Aberrometry, Dr. Wu, you have a little bit more experience than I do in this, but this is something new and exciting. A lot of our patients, even with 20/20 vision, still complain that they're seeing, that they're not seeing the right way. And so, Dr. Wu, what's your experience with aberrometry?
Yeah, there was a great lecture that Lynette Johns gave this morning talking about HOA optics and aberrometers. So I would love to go back to that lecture and kind of go over what she had to say. But I think this is going to be another future technology that we have. So we basically just wanted to end the meeting with just a quick poll. We just, for our information, wanted to kind of know how experienced you all were with specialty lenses, just so we kind of knew. And it's kind of interesting. We kind of have people from all over the map. We've got people really experienced, we've got people with no experience, very little. So it's this is just really interesting for Dr. Kramer and I, because as we present these lectures, and we're going to be presenting this lecture again in March, but it's always good for us to kind of know who our audience is, so we can kind of gear the next lecture toward that specific group. So thank you for sharing your experience with us. And if you want to just show the last slide, Dr. Kramer, we can wrap things up. And if there's a question that we did not get to, please feel free to email us. We would love to help you. Both Dr. Kramer and I, we
That's us
absolutely.
together in Miami.
Yes, yes. So Dr. Kramer and I, we're best friends. We love helping people. This is something we're so passionate about. So if there's a question that you have and we didn't get to it, please email us. We're happy to share information, and I'm sad that we're not all together in person so we can answer it in person, but please reach out to us anytime. And thank you, Dr. Kramer, for sharing your evening with me.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the GSLS for this opportunity. I'm sorry we didn't get to answer all your questions. Please email us. We will get back to you. Absolutely. And look forward to seeing you all very soon.
Bye.
Bye.